Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa and I'm the owner of SeasonedAndServedBlog.com. Today I'm taking you through our garden and we are doing our September garden tour. Over the summer we grew so many amazing fruits and vegetables, and I am showing you all the things that we grew, and we're also going to do a really big harvest. We have tons of tomatoes, peppers, squash, and just about everything else in between, and I can't wait to show you what our garden produced over the summer months. So if you're interested in seeing our September garden tour and harvest, just keep on watching. We'll start off on our first garden bed where we have some tomatoes, and all the tomatoes in this bed are the larger size tomatoes as opposed to cherry tomatoes. So in this garden bed I grew some green zebra tomatoes, some red heirloom tomatoes, yellow tomatoes, and San Marzano tomatoes. Of all the tomatoes that I grew this year, the San Marzanos did the best, with 3 plants producing 20 pounds of tomatoes, which is so amazing, and I can't wait to grow these again next year. And now we'll take some time to enjoy this relaxing tomato harvest. Next, over in our second garden bed, this is where I have all of our smaller cherry tomatoes. I love tomatoes, as you guys can see, and we produced a bunch of cherry tomatoes. These are some of the purple bumblebee tomatoes that we have. We also had some sunrise bumblebee, gold nugget tomatoes, indigo rose tomatoes. They all turned out so great. Of all the cherry tomatoes, the purple bumblebee cherry tomatoes did the best, with 2 plants producing 13 pounds of tomatoes, and you'll see us collecting them as we harvest them. It was absolutely incredible. The plants grew taller than me. I think they were about like a foot to a foot and a half taller than me, and just so full and bushy. They were amazing. So I can't wait to do these again next year, along with the gold nugget tomatoes. Those ones turned out so sweet. I might have actually eaten just 10 pounds of tomatoes off of that without actually weighing them, but oh, those ones were delicious as well. Next up in our third garden bed, this is where a lot of our squash and kale are, and in this bed we have a huge butternut squash plant. This thing is a monster and it produced so many butternut squashes. In total we had 20 butternut squash exactly. There are actually 2 more still growing, so we will have 22 this year, and this was just from 2 plants. I honestly cannot believe it. I think that next year I really want to try growing our butternut squash and training it up over the black trellis that we have at the entrance to our garden. I think that'll look super cool, and to see the butternut squash hanging down in the fall months is gonna be amazing. So I want to try that next year, because this little trellis that we made ourselves got taken over by like June. It's crazy how far the squash grew. So I think the trellis will be a great spot for it next year. So after harvesting our butternut squash, I went over to our patty pan squash and harvested those. There were some really large ones that were left on the plants and they had sort of a tough skin, so I wanted to just cut those off and decorate around the house with them for fall. And there are still lots of tender ones on these plants. I grew 4 plants this year, which was a lot, and it's still producing more. So definitely next year I'm going to cut down on the amount of patty pan squash plants, but they were so great this summer and I can't wait to see how long they keep producing into the fall. And over in our herb garden, we still have lots of sage going strong for fall recipes. I also bought a rosemary plant and planted that, and unfortunately our Thai basil is on the way out. Super sad. We also have our chives still going strong, and our Italian basil is still kind of hanging on, but as you can see, it is blossoming. Unfortunately, these blossoms are a sign that summer is coming to an end. And next up, let's head into the greenhouse. First thing that we have in here are jalapeno peppers, and I grew 4 plants this year, and this seemed to be just the right amount. It was a lot for just the 2 of us, but we gave away lots to our friends who stopped by over the summer, as well as our neighbors, and just about anyone else who needed jalapeno peppers. Our Phileas blue peppers have started to turn red, as well as our habanero peppers. I cannot believe I grew habanero peppers. I grew 2 habanero pepper plants as it was my first time growing these from seed, and they both did very well. They started off slow, but in the end they produced about 12 habanero peppers per plant, which was really great. And in terms of flavor, they are hot. I've added them into a few dishes and my mouth was burning, but in a good way. And luckily, Pearl doesn't go anywhere near the spicy pepper plants. She just likes the sweet pepper plants, and of course, seeing what's going on in the greenhouse. And next up we have our eggplant, and this is my second year growing these eggplant, and unfortunately it wasn't as great as our first year. They did stay a little bit on the smaller side, and I think that's because the jalapenos grew super tall and actually kind of blocked the sun from them, but they still taste really delicious. We just didn't get as much as our first year. And after harvesting the greenhouse, this is what our basket of goodies looks like. As you can see, it is mostly peppers. I am so happy with everything, especially the habaneros. You'll also see that there's little mini purple and red peppers as well. Those are the sweet peppers, and they were delicious this year too. And that's a tour for the new raised garden beds and the greenhouse. Now let's head over to our older raised garden bed to see what's growing in there. This is our older raised garden bed area, and we have tons of delicious vegetables growing in here. First up, this is my supermoon pumpkin. I planted this way back in the summertime and it is ready for harvest. This little guy looks so adorable and I can't believe I grew this from seed. I also have a second one here, and this one was a little bit smaller, but it is still adorable nonetheless. I also went ahead and harvested our massive Howden pumpkin. This vine grew super long, but it only produced 1 pumpkin, but I can't blame it because this pumpkin was massive. It was so big and I couldn't even cut through the stem. It was so thick. I had to use a bunch of different knives. It was so big that it actually weighed in at a whopping 22.4 pounds. Wow. And after taking a break from lifting that massive pumpkin, I went ahead and harvested our corn. I planted a huge block of this back at the beginning of summer, and it pollinated perfectly. I didn't have to do anything by hand, and we had tons of ears of corn. In total, after our harvest, we had about 20 corn ears, which was amazing. And we were able to cook some of this on the barbecue, boil it. I even cut some off the cob and froze it to store throughout the winter time. And last but not least, from this area, I went ahead and harvested our taro squash. I'm not sure if that's the proper name for it, but it does taste like a cross between a butternut squash and a taro, which is pretty cool. And we grew this vine. We didn't get it from seed. We actually got it as a start from David's parents, but we grew 3 of our own squash from it. So that was the biggest one, the first one there, and there was 2 smaller ones nestled amongst the corn. And last but not least, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a surprise. We actually grew cantaloupe. This was by a total mistake. This came up from our compost, but we got 3 little baby cantaloupes from our garden as well. Totally unexpected, but they tasted really, really great. So it was a very fun and tasty surprise. And that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed this September garden tour and our big harvest, definitely hit that like button down below, as well as the red subscribe button for more amazing gardening videos just like this one. And yes, there will still be gardening videos going into the winter months because we do live in a very temperate climate here on Vancouver Island, and we are lucky enough to be able to grow food year-round. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram for sneak peeks of our garden before my next YouTube video, and also check out my blog for lots of garden to table recipes. I can definitely foresee lots of butternut squash recipes coming soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.